Doctors are frustrated, families are broken, prosecutors are stunned by what fentanyl is doing to this state.
Fentanyl is the most dangerous drug in the world right now.
Some direct questions on crime and homelessness for a candidate running for Denver mayor with the backing of big business. Tribal leaders, in a first-of-its-kind address at the state capitol, outlined their vision for Colorado's future. This was supposed to be one of those car vending machines, except the company's now in deep trouble, and it's just sitting empty on some of the most valuable, visible property in town.
It's kind of like having a wacky, waving inflatable tube man in front of a dealership.
And a second chance in the new year for Coloradans who want nothing more than to put their boots on and go to work. Tonight on Next. Fentanyl is changing this state, stealing lives. More than 900 fentanyl deaths in 2021, double the prior year. The drug now has the full attention of doctors, law enforcement, and state legislators. Our Nusha Roy looks at what widespread awareness can and can't do in the fight against fentanyl.
Fentanyl is a lethal opioid contaminating drugs.
From PSAs across social media to district attorneys trying to reach families.
I try to talk about it in almost every public appearance I have.
And emergency rooms rolling out programs, handing out naloxone.
I am seeing a difference, and I think the education is crucial.
There is an across-the-board effort to make fentanyl a part of everyday conversations. Based off the metrics, the Keep the Party Safe campaign through the Drug Consortium was successful at getting people's attention on TV and social media. Dr. Katie Sprinkle with the Medical Center of Aurora ER said the number of patients have not gone down, but she has seen more people interested in getting treatment.
Similarly for Narcan, just more people know what it is and how to use it, and there seems to be less stigma around its use.
And Dr. Rob Valek with the Drug Consortium believes that people are starting to get more real about the situation.
More people think it applies to them than they did 6 months ago.
But for all those steps forward, everyone today said they are up against a powerful enemy. And it haunts 17th Judicial District Attorney Brian Mason.
And the most egregious and horrific example of that is the 5 deaths in Commerce City.
5 people, Mason said, thought were taking cocaine, not fentanyl.
I was out on scene that night, and the tragedy and shock of that crime and that incident stays with me to my core.
A case, Mason said, has essentially gone cold.
And we just haven't been able to put together a case that has the evidence to support it.
Despite all the conversations and outreach, he still meets people who don't even know what fentanyl is.
Or who have heard vaguely about it but haven't talked to their kids about it.
A fentanyl overdose.
Which is why across the board, experts said doubling down on messaging for kids and parents is key. So is a bigger push for more naloxone and access to treatment.
And I don't think we'll ever get ahead of it until we really focus on early childhood through young adulthood and detection and better behavioral health in general.
So unfortunately, these last couple of years have been really hard because every year we have seen more drug overdose deaths than the previous year in Colorado. That is including overdose deaths involving fentanyl. Now, here's the thing. We don't have the full numbers for 2022 yet, but Dr. Valek said that we could be plateauing. It's not great, but he said at least we're not skyrocketing, which is what we were seeing between 2020 and 21, and it really got so many people's attention.
Awareness certainly changes the conversations that we have. I mean, look at the last couple of decades in the way that the idea of not drinking and driving or getting a designated driver is now just something that people assume that's the way you're supposed to do things. I remember last year we talked about the idea of more people carrying naloxone.
Right.
And there were some political figures in town that thought that that was hilarious and mocked us left and right for that. But then you'd hear from parents and schools and churches going, yeah, no, we're carrying naloxone.
Yeah, and Dr. Valek was saying if you apply kind of what you were saying, right? It's totally normal to talk about a DD. Do you take Uber? Well, what if you do the same thing in this situation, saying, well, who's going to have the naloxone on them? Who is going to stay sober enough to be able to step in if something happens? And he hopes that that kind of changes the conversation to make that safety conversation a lot more routine with a lot of the other scenarios that we're already used to having that same kind of talk before we go out for the night.
Yeah, the idea is people are always going to make dangerous choices. What's the best way to keep them from dying or hurting somebody else? All right, Nusha, thank you. Some of the most prominent candidates for Denver mayor have run headlong into taking the tough questions during this campaign, and others have taken a more cautious approach. Fewer tough questions, more carefully managed events. That's what former Denver Chamber of Commerce CEO Kelly Brough has done. So our politics guy, Marshall Zellinger, decided that he would just show up at one of her events today to ask Bruff directly about some topics that other candidates are discussing, like the Denver police officer indicted for a shooting that injured 6 people in Lodo, whether we should be continuing Denver's homeless sweeps, and whether to divert some police funding to types of first responders who come without guns.
Does that mean if you're mayor, Denver police gets fewer dollars so you can use more money for co-responder programs?
Yeah, I think it's hard to know now, have we overfunded or underfunded police? Certainly when you compare in the nation, it looks like we need more officers per capita. But as you make this shift, to your point, Marshall, maybe we don't. This isn't about defunding anybody. This is about making sure we have the right resources and provide the funding for those resources to the right issue.
I need to ask you about a police officer incident where a grand jury indicted an officer for criminal negligence in the shooting downtown.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on that first?
Yeah. So I read the report from the grand jury, the indictment, and what it looks like, they identified 2 officers that they said acted appropriately and no indictment included. And for a 3rd officer, they outlined the facts that showed why he was being indicted. And I trust that process. That grand jury was thoughtful, not emotionally involved, didn't have a self-interest in the outcome of this, and it looks like they got it right.
It's early afternoon, we're kind of shivering. On a day like today, like this morning, should the city be doing homeless sweeps with weather like this?
Hey, you know, I think what's important on weather like this is we do everything we can to get people sheltered and housed and out of this situation because it's so unsafe for them. But we all know sweeps don't work. You know, moving a tent across a border, pretending we solved someone's problem, it doesn't work. We need to house and shelter people.
Would you do away with any City of Denver employee being sent out to do a homeless sweep?
I think outreach will be critically important. And you're making me talk about a policy I'm not supposed to talk about yet because we haven't issued it. But this is what I would say. We know outreach will be critically important to housing and sheltering people. That will be our strategy. And I'm going to give you all the details you want, Marshall, but let us finalize it and release it publicly.
That sounded like a dodge on a question that a lot of candidates in the race have answered. So we went back to Bruff's team and asked for clarity on the issue. Will she or won't she continue Denver's homeless sweeps? And they said Bruff would stop the sweeps. You can find Marshall's full exchange with Kelly Bruff and our extended interviews with several of the 27 candidates running for Denver mayor on the next YouTube channel. After 146 years of the Colorado legislature, a historic first today. Leaders from the state's 2 federally recognized tribes addressed legislators. It's a first that will be followed by a second and a third, fourth, and so on. A law passed last year requires the legislature to invite representatives from the Ute, Mountain Ute, and Southern Ute Indian tribes to address the General Assembly each year. Chairman Manuel Hart of the Ute Mountain Ute tribe and Melvin Baker from the Southern Ute Indian tribe shared the history of their tribes and the concessions that they've been forced to make in various treaties over the years. They told legislators that they would like to prioritize economic development and have tribal casinos participate in online sports betting, and they would like better protections for tribal water rights.
There are times when you legislate that you may not remember there are 2 sovereign tribes within your borders, and you may not realize that your legislation may unintentionally appear to affect those living on tribal lands and impinge upon the tribe's jurisdictions.
We all claim these lands as our homeland. But let us look at the past history and what has been taken away. All those lost opportunities we shall address, and we shall address them today and look toward future opportunities.
Chairman Hart highlighted 2 bills from last year that he said the tribes really appreciated. There was the bill banning the use of Native American mascots at schools, and a bill that set up an office to help investigate missing persons cases that involve Indigenous people. As we think about fresh starts for the new year, I think about fresh starts for our neighbors who are ready for a second chance in life. And so often, that starts with landing a job, a chance to be self-sufficient. And for some of our neighbors, that's where the dream of a fresh start in the new year ends because of some barrier they have to employment from their past. That's why this week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign supports Community Works, a longtime nonprofit active across Colorado, helping people who really want to get back to work get into the workforce. Community Works provides job training, apprenticeship, and job placement help for Coloradans with barriers to employment. Sometimes that is as simple as helping somebody who's coming out of the justice system get safe and warm work clothes so that they can go get a job, get back to life, and earn a living. Sometimes that means longer-term mentoring with a personal career coach to help somebody find a job that'll provide long-term stability in their life. And Community Works has another secret ingredient. They have pre-made connections with employers who are willing to give people that second chance. So when they walk in for the interview, there's less nervousness about uncomfortable questions. There's an understanding that the person there for the interview is trying to bounce back and have a fresh start, and the employer is willing to give them one. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word thanks to 303-871-1491 to get that link to donate. Your $10 million in micro-giving proves the power of $5 donations. So as always, I'll match the first 50 donations of $5 to get us rolling. A Community Works participant named Casper said he came to them at his lowest point in life. And he said that they kept him on the right path. And now he enjoys, he wrote, being the person that others can rely on. That's what it's all about. That is life-changing stuff. The city passes sweeping new gun control while asking, should it be the state doing this? A company built a giant car vending machine in Denver, then fell on hard times. So, anybody know what to do with an enormous car vending machine?
Well, what about putting antique cars? An 8-story bar? That would be interesting.
Some ideas of what could happen with the empty Carvana building. I'd like to hear yours. Next. Broomfield City Council asked to get sued last night. That's what happens when cities and counties pass gun control right now. There's a state law that allows them to do it, to go farther than state law goes. But gun rights groups have made it clear they're going to sue, and they're going to make that an expensive hassle. Last night, Broomfield restricted both concealed and open carry, banned the sale of rapid-fire trigger activators, and banned so-called ghost guns that don't have serial numbers. Broomfield Council postponed decisions on raising the age requirement to buy a gun and expanding waiting periods. Some on City Council said they voted no on the gun control measures because they thought it would only be effective if it's passed on the statewide level, not the city level. The gun lobbyists at Rocky Mountain Gun Owners say they are prepared to sue Broomfield. They already have suits going challenging gun restrictions in Boulder, Superior, and Louisville. Those ordinances all include restrictions on so-called assault weapons, high-capacity magazines, which is, we should say, something they did not do in Broomfield.
Well, light snow showers moved out of the Front Range earlier this afternoon, still pushing through portions of the eastern plains. We're at 30 degrees right now at DIA, dry but cloudy, and it feels like 30 degrees with very calm winds, but we do still have a lot of fog around the area. You can see some areas reduced to under a mile of visibility, so you do want to continue to make sure and be aware of that as we go through the rest of the evening. What we're also going to be aware of is this low pressure system that's now pushing eastward of Colorado, but on the backside of it, it's going to continue to bring more snow showers across the plains as we go into the evening. Because of the lingering snow showers, we do still have winter weather advisories that will be in effect for central and northern portions of the high country, as well as northern portions of the eastern plains, where we're still expecting maybe a couple more inches of snow, but we will see those stronger winds creating that blowing snow and reduced visibility out there. We'll see overnight lows near 22 degrees. We start to rebound tomorrow with more sunshine. We're in the middle to upper 40s, and then we're back in the 50s as we make our way into the weekend.
8 stories of nothing sitting on prime real estate along I-25. Try to figure out if a multi-million-dollar car vending machine will ever be used. Next. You build an office building and the company goes kaput, and another business can just buy the space. You build an 8-story Carvana car vending machine at Evans and I-25, and that company runs into trouble, and you end up with an empty 8-story Carvana car vending machine at Evans and I-25. Anchorman and reporter Steve Steger is trapped in this glass case of no motion.
You can see it from everywhere.
Even on a foggy day, it still snags eyeballs on I-25, though the interest factor in Carvana's giant vending machine may be more about what's not inside these days.
We refer to it as the bubblegum machine for cars. And there it sits, blocking my mountain view.
Next door at the Dirty Duck, they've watched this behemoth grow and sit.
It's empty. You know, we know the Carvana's currently not in the best position business-wise. and we don't know what's going on.
Business-wise, Carvana is on the struggle bus. Shares of stock for the online car dealer have lost 96% of their value in the last year. A company expected to explode during the pandemic is imploding on the other side.
It went from not being able to process enough inventory to having too much inventory and not being able to sell it at what they actually bought it for.
Michael Wayland covers the auto industry for CNBC.
The car vending machine is a really novel idea. It's kind of like having a wacky waving inflatable tube man in front of a dealership or a giant gorilla. It's just a little bit more costly.
Costly indeed. Carvana paid $5.8 million for this plot of land near Evans and I-25. Property that had to be rezoned so that Carvana could build 8 stories.
At each stage, the officials on the board or on the council would clearly think it was a little questionable or weird.
Thomas Gownley covered that process for Business Den.
There was definitely skepticism on the planning board and at Denver City Council around, is this, a structure that has a long-term future in Denver?
That approval came a year and a half ago, long before Carvana's financial struggles. For what it's worth, the company told me last week that they still plan on opening their Denver location. In the meantime, people will keep looking up and wondering what could happen to a car vending machine with no cars.
An 8-story bar, that would be interesting. You'd have fantastic mountain views. It would be quite the operation.
Yeah, imagine trying to run the beer lines up there. These Carvana vending machines are really billboards. It's not like you just walk up, put your credit card in, and buy a car. This is a place where you pick up a car that you've already purchased. So the visibility is really the value here. A lot of residential or commercial real estate folks that I talk to say it's the matter of hard corners. Hard corners means you're on the corner of 2 really busy streets, so the visibility is key. And they say in that case, a property like that is priceless. One real estate agent even suggested that if they go out or something, you might have like a Tom Shane coming in and just putting like a giant diamond on top of that thing because I-25 in Evans, I-25 in Arapahoe Road, all that stuff.
So it's valuable advertising for Carvana because it's their logo, but what they're advertising is like, we may not have any cars. Like, that's not great advertising.
It's wild, and I think they're getting more attention for that now. Now, you could argue that any attention is good attention. It gets people to the website.
Yeah.
But, and you hope maybe that might be able to help them through this financial trouble they're in right now. But.
Yikes. All right. We're going to solve this tonight.
What should we make it?
We're going to solve this. I don't have any ideas. I'm a TV news anchor. This is where you come in and save the day, because you're always thinking, what is a good use for an empty 8-story car vending machine? You already have this in your head. You figured it out while Steve was telling you the story. So I need you to do this quick because I want to talk about it when we get back. Email your ideas to next@9news.com. Fix the Carvana thing. That's your feedback next. There are Coloradans looking for a second chance in the new year. Maybe they've been in trouble with the law or drugs or any of the many setbacks that can turn into lifelong challenges for our neighbors. Community Works provides job training, apprenticeships, and direct connections to employers who are willing to give somebody a second chance. They even provide a work-appropriate wardrobe, so that's not a stumbling block for anybody. If you'd like to join me and a bunch of your neighbors in contributing to this week's Word of Thanks campaign, scan the QR code on your screen or text the word thanks to 303-871-1491. So many suggestions of what to do with the Carvana building. Tricia and many others say housing for the homeless. Tina said turn it into an urban farm. Denise suggested maybe a slide and a fun park. David was thinking a giant weed grow house. I personally like Jeff's thought, forward-looking. He writes, in 19,000 years, archaeologists will excavate the totem to the god Carvana.